Welcome back to Financial Cookie, the only AI podcast you'll ever need. We're diving into some pretty intense stuff today. Investor panic, economic decline, the fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's episode 5, and we're tackling the big question. Is it time to worry? Should we all be worried?
Well, the AI market has been pretty wild lately. Some stocks are skyrocketing, others are plummeting. It's enough to make even, a seasoned investor sweat a little bit. What do you think?
Oh, definitely. And I bet our listeners are wondering, what does this mean for my own money, for my own investments?
And that is exactly what we're going to break down. We've got some really interesting articles to unpack, plus some really insightful guidance from our podcast director, right from the director's letter.
Straight from the top. I love it. Let's get into it.
All right, so first up, Palantir. The stock took a pretty big hit, almost 30%,
Wow.
after their CEO, Alex Karp, announced he's going to sell off a bunch of his shares. Now, does that mean that even he's losing faith in the company's future?
Well, selling 10% of your holdings, it doesn't necessarily mean he's hitting the panic button. I think it's important to remember that.
Okay, so maybe not panic, but it's still a big chunk. Yeah.
It is, yeah. But think of it like this. Imagine someone selling their house after they just, did this huge renovation. They're probably just taking some profits. It doesn't mean they think the house is going to fall apart the next day.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. It's all about perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But then, on the other hand, we've got a company like NVIDIA, right?
Right.
And they just absolutely crush their earnings expectations. So you'd think their stock would be, through the roof.
Yeah, going crazy.
But it's been pretty flat. What's going on there?
So I think we got to look at the bigger picture here. The tech market as a whole has been cooling off recently. There's a lot of uncertainty around, President Trump's economic policies, and that's making some investors a little, nervous.
Right, makes sense. But what I find interesting is our director actually sees this market dip as a potential buying opportunity. In the director's letter, they talk about how times of volatility, this is when patient investors can really snag some deals.
I think that's right. It's like a flash sale, but for stocks.
Yeah, exactly.
And, what I think is particularly insightful is the emphasis the director puts on, companies that are leveraging existing AI infrastructure instead of just trying to build everything from scratch. And this brings up an interesting question about, companies like Apple. They've been pretty quiet when it comes to AI.
Speaking of Apple, they just dropped this bombshell, this massive $500 billion investment plan in the U.S. It's a huge number.
Yeah.
But our director calls it a political play in the letter. What do you think they mean by that?
It's a really interesting statement for sure, because while Apple definitely has the resources and the talent to, make a big splash in AI, they haven't really been leading the charge so far. So could this massive investment be more about political maneuvering than a genuine push for AI?
Makes you wonder, right?
It really does. It really does.
Is Apple maybe playing the long game here?
Yeah.
Waiting in the wings to just dominate the AI scene later on?
Yeah.
Like an underdog waiting to sweep in and win the game in the final quarter?
Interesting analogy. But I think the real key takeaway here, and something that our director strongly believes in, is that the true potential of AI lies in its applications and agents.
Okay, so it's not just about building the coolest, fastest AI. It's about what that AI can actually do for businesses and for everyday people, right?
Exactly. Think of it like this. Would you rather have, a super fancy sports car that you just kind of look at in your garage, or a reliable, workhorse of a truck that can actually get things done? It's about real world solutions, not just flashy tech.
Yeah. It's about utility, right? I get it. And speaking of companies that are putting AI to work, we've talked about Walmart before on the show and how their strategic use of AI is making them a potential sleeper hit, right?
Yeah, they're definitely one to watch. They're not just chasing the hype. They're implementing practical AI solutions that are making a difference in their business right now. Speaking of companies, though, how about we talk about one that's been facing some challenges? Big Bear AI. Their stock has been struggling lately. Why do you think that is?
Well, it goes back to what our director said about the speculative nature of this whole AI space, right?
Yeah.
Investors really need to understand what these companies are actually doing. What problems are they solving? Not just, buy into the hype. Big Bear AI, they're focused on working with government agencies to make things more efficient. Now, that might not be as flashy as some of the other AI applications out there, but it's a critical area.
Right.
And I think it has the potential for a lot of long-term growth.
Yeah, and I think it's a perfect example of why our director is such an advocate for dollar cost averaging as an investment strategy, right?
Hmm.
Don't try to time the market perfectly. Nobody can do that. But consistently investing over time, even at small amounts, that's how you build wealth in the long run.
Yeah, slow and steady wins the race.
Right, exactly.
But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about kind of the elephant in the room, President Trump, his trade policies. I mean, his approach has been, well, aggressive to say the least. Like that 25% tariff he's threatening on, goods from the EU, that's definitely creating some tension globally.
Absolutely. And the analysis we've seen suggests that Trump often uses tariffs as a bargaining chip to try and, get what he wants. Hard to say if this is a genuine threat or just a negotiating tactic, but it's something investors should definitely be aware of.
It's a high stakes game for sure.
Yeah.
But there's also this potential upside that our director highlighted, this possible deal with Ukraine involving rare earth minerals.
Oh, interesting.
And this could be huge for Tesla and other Elon Musk companies.
Right.
Because they rely heavily on these materials.
Yeah, definitely something to watch. The situation's got global implications, could impact a whole range of industries. So it's about staying informed, being ready to adapt as things unfold.
So it sounds like we're in for a wild ride.
Buckle up.
The AI landscape, it's full of potential, but there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of volatility. Any advice for our listeners on how to navigate all of this?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to focus on understanding the companies, their potential, and the broader economic forces at play. Don't get caught up in the hype.
Right. Do your research, be patient.
Exactly.
And remember, this AI revolution, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But now let's circle back to Apple for a second and that massive $500 billion investment.
Okay. It's really fascinating to see how this whole AI landscape is shaping up. It's like everybody's playing the same game, but with totally different strategies.
It really is. It's
Mhm.
wild, right? You've got companies like NVIDIA, like we were just talking
Yeah.
about. They're focused on building the horsepower, the chips, the hardware that, make it all possible.
Right, like the foundation of it all.
Exactly, the foundation.
Yeah.
And then you've got others like Walmart. They're quietly integrating AI into their existing operations, making their business more efficient, more profitable.
Sneaky, sneaky.
Right. And then you've got Apple, the wild card. They've got the resources. They've got the talent to just completely shake things up. But they're being very, very strategic.
They are. They're playing it close to the vest.
Yeah, it's like they're holding their cards close, waiting for the right moment to reveal their hand.
I'm kind of on the edge of my seat waiting to see what they're going to do.
I know, me too. But then on the other side of the spectrum, you've got companies like, Big Bear AI, who've been having a harder time.
Yeah, they've been struggling to find their footing. And I think
Well-
it's a good reminder that not every company that jumps into the AI game is going to be a winner.
Right. Not everyone's going to hit a home run.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think this is a rapidly evolving landscape, and only the companies that can really adapt and innovate are going to thrive.
Yeah, that's why it's so important for investors to actually do their due diligence.
Yeah.
Right. You can't just, buy into the hype. You got to understand what's the business model? What problem are they actually trying to solve?
100%. And, it's important to keep in mind that we're still in the early days of all of this AI revolution.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be twists and turns. There's going to be winners and losers.
It's like any tech revolution, right? I mean, look back at the dot-com boom.
Exactly. There's always a shakeout period. But one thing's for sure, AI is going to have a huge impact on, everything, how we live, how we work, how we interact with each other.
Yeah. I mean, it's already happening.
It is, and those changes are only going to accelerate as the technology gets more advanced.
Buckle up, right?
Buckle up, exactly. It's going to be a wild ride.
One of the things I find most exciting about AI, honestly, is its potential to, solve some of the world's biggest problems.
I completely agree with that. Think about things like healthcare, climate change, even poverty. AI could potentially help us address those challenges in ways that we never even thought possible before.
It's pretty incredible to think about. I mean, the positive impact it could have.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we also have to be mindful of the potential downsides too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, what are the ethical dilemmas that might come up as AI becomes more powerful?
You're hitting on a really crucial point there. We need to be having these conversations now, to make sure we're using this technology responsibly.
It's like we can't just focus on developing the tech. We got to figure out how to use it ethically, right?
Exactly. And make sure its benefits are shared fairly. It's about asking the tough questions now to avoid problems later.
It's about progress, but it's also about responsibility, finding that balance.
Yeah, walking that tightrope. One of the biggest challenges with AI right now is separating the hype from reality because it's easy to get caught up in the excitement and believe that, oh, AI is this magic bullet. It's going to solve all our problems overnight.
Right, but AI, it's a tool.
It is.
Like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
Exactly. And it's up to us as a society to make sure we're using it for the right reasons, for the benefit of humanity.
And that's a big responsibility.
It is a huge responsibility. It's funny how we started this episode talking about, investor panic and economic decline, and now we're like having this philosophical discussion about AI changing the world.
It's a good sign. It means we're not getting bogged down in the day-to-day, the short-term stuff. We're thinking about the big picture.
And the big pictures, AI could be this incredibly powerful force for good, as long as we as humans approach it thoughtfully and ethically.
I couldn't agree more.
Mm.
Okay, I want to circle back to Apple, though. And that massive $500 billion investment, remember our director called it a political play? Yeah, it really made me think, what if it's not just about competing with the current AI leaders, What if it's about laying the groundwork for a future where AI agents are the dominant force? Remember how our director was talking about the power of agents?
That's a really interesting thought. Are they like quietly building up this huge network of AI agents behind the scenes,
Wow.
working on some kind of, game-changing technology we haven't even seen yet?
It's a mystery. But it does suggest that Apple is thinking long-term,
They are.
strategically positioning themselves.
For a future that could look very different. That's a big question mark. We'll have to wait and see how it all unfolds. But one thing I know for sure, the world of AI, it's full of surprises.
It is.
And I think we're going to see some major shifts and changes in the next few years. It's an exciting time to be following all of this.
It really is. But I think we need to go back to what our director said about AI agents being the real game changer. For our listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with the tech world, can you explain what an AI agent is and why they're so important?
Yeah, I think for people who aren't super familiar with all the, tech jargon, the term AI agent can sound a little intimidating, like almost sci-fi, right?
Right, like it's something out of a movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But actually, at its core, it's a pretty simple concept. Just imagine a piece of software that can act on your behalf. Like it can make decisions, take actions based on your goals and preferences.
Okay, so not robots taking over the world.
Not quite yet. But those chatbots you see popping up on websites or like virtual assistants on your phone, those are like really basic examples of AI agents.
Okay, I see. So they're already out there.
Yeah, they're already here. And as they get, smarter, more sophisticated, they'll be able to handle more complex tasks, managing your finances, scheduling your appointments, even making healthcare decisions. It's pretty wild to think about.
Wow, yeah. That's a lot of responsibility to hand over to a, piece of software. Do you think people are going to be comfortable with that?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And I think it's one of the biggest challenges for developers. There are definitely concerns around privacy, security, even the potential for these AI agents to be used, for bad stuff.
So, we need some serious ethical guidelines in place before we just, let these AI agents loose on the world.
Absolutely, yeah. We got to make sure we're using this tech responsibly. But I think if we can do that, if we can address those concerns, AI agents could have a seriously transformative impact on our lives.
It's mind-blowing to think about. Almost like having a personal assistant that's always there, always learning, always getting better.
Right, like a superpowered sidekick for everything you do. Our director really believes that AI agents are going to be the driving force behind this whole AI revolution. And honestly, the more I learn about them, the more I'm starting to see it too.
Okay, so we talked about AI agents, their potential, but let's zoom out for a second. Talk about the bigger economic picture. I mean, there's a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty in the air right now.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Lots of talk about a potential recession, and that can be unsettling for anyone, especially for investors. But I think it's important to remember that economic cycles, they're normal. They're just part of how things work.
So basically, don't panic.
Exactly. When we panic, we make bad decisions, So let's focus on what we can control. We can do our research. We can diversify our investments. And, remember what we talked about earlier, dollar cost averaging. That's a great tool for riding out those market storms.
It's all about staying calm, being strategic, and keeping your eye on the prize. Long-term growth.
Exactly.
But I got to be honest. It's hard not to get swept up in all the headlines, the doom and gloom, especially when you see these huge market swings.
I get it, it can feel like a roller coaster, but remember, those headlines, they're usually focused on the short-term stuff, the sensational stuff. We need to look past that and focus on the fundamentals.
Okay, so how do we do that? Like, what are some key things to keep in mind when we're trying to, assess those fundamentals?
Well, for individual companies, look at their earnings reports. Look at their leadership. What's their overall business strategy? Are they innovating? Are they adapting to the market? Are they solving real problems? And then on a bigger level, keep an eye on global trends. Geopolitics, technology, all the big picture stuff.
It's a lot to keep track of, but it's also
Yeah.
like it makes it so exciting, right? It's like we're literally watching a technological revolution unfold right in front of us.
It really is. And who knows what incredible breakthroughs are just around the corner. This is just the beginning of the AI story. I can't wait to see what happens
Me
next.
neither. And that brings us to the end of another episode of Financial Cookie, the only AI podcast you'll ever need.
We hope you enjoyed our deep dive.
Remember, stay curious, stay informed, and stay ahead of the curve. This is Financial Cookie, signing off.